Have you ever watched a potential business deal worth hundreds of thousands of dollars completely implode because someone couldn't control their temper for 5 minutes in a parking lot? That's exactly what happened when my client Barbara decided to verbally attack a warehouse employee right before our crucial meeting with the property owner. What started as a perfect commercial real estate opportunity turned into the most spectacular client meltdown I've witnessed in 15 years of being a broker. Hi, I'm John Peters, and I'm the one sharing this story with you today. Finding commercial warehouse space in Mango Park is like searching for gold in a desert. The area is landlocked, demand is sky high, and properties almost never hit the market. So, when Barbara Kowalski walked into my office last Tuesday morning with cash in hand and an urgent need for 20 to 30,000 square feet, I knew we had our work cut out for us. She sat across from my desk, perfectly put together in a business suit, explaining that her family's distribution company was expanding rapidly and needed space immediately. "John, I've heard you're the best commercial agent in Mango Park," she said, with the kind of confidence that comes from money and success. "I need someone who can find what doesn't exist on the market." I appreciated her directness, and honestly, the challenge excited me. I pulled up my database and started scrolling through available properties, explaining the harsh reality as I went. Most warehouses in that size range were already leased long-term, and the few that had been for sale recently had already closed. Barbara listened patiently, her fingers drumming lightly on my desk, clearly hoping I'd pull a rabbit out of a hat. Then I remembered something. "You know what, Barbara? I might have found something," I said, clicking through my notes from the previous year. "There's this family business called Jones Health and Beauty. They tried to sell their building last year when they wanted to upgrade to something bigger, but they couldn't find a buyer and gave up. Their warehouse would be absolutely perfect for what you need." Barbara's eyes lit up with interest. "Are they selling now?" she asked, leaning forward in her chair. I had to be honest with her. Not actively, but it's possible they might consider it if the offer is right. Let me reach out to them and feel out the situation. Barbara didn't hesitate for a second. "Tell them I'll offer market rate, I can close in 30 days, and it'll be a firm cash offer. No financing contingencies, no inspection drama, just clean and fast." That was music to any realtor's ears, and I promised her I'd make the call immediately and get back to her within 24 hours. She left my office clearly satisfied, and I felt cautiously optimistic about making this work. I dialed Jones Health and Beauty that same afternoon, and a woman answered on the third ring. "Diane speaking. How can I help you?" Her voice was professional but warm. I introduced myself and explained that I was a local realtor who knew their property had been on the market last year. There was a brief pause before she responded. "Yes, we did have it listed, but we took it off the market because we never received a reasonable offer. The lowball offers were honestly insulting." I could hear the frustration still lingering in her voice from that experience. "Diane, let me ask you something," I said carefully. "If I had the right buyer willing to pay market rate with a cash offer and a quick close, would you be interested in reconsidering?" Another pause, longer this time, and I could almost hear her thinking through the possibilities. "Well, that's something I'd have to discuss with my father," Diane finally said. "But honestly, maybe. We could definitely use the money to upgrade to a larger space since we are still growing." That maybe was all I needed to hear. I asked if I could come by to meet with her and take some pictures of the building to show my client, and she checked her schedule right there on the phone. "How does tomorrow around 2 o'clock sound?" she asked. I confirmed immediately, feeling that familiar rush of excitement when a deal starts coming together. "Perfect, and you'll be able to meet my father too," she added before we hung up. I immediately texted Barbara with the good news, and her response was almost instant with multiple exclamation points. This was happening. The next afternoon, I arrived at the Jones Health and Beauty warehouse right on time. The building was exactly what Barbara needed, sitting on a great lot with easy access to the main commercial corridor. Diane greeted me at the entrance with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Come on in, John. Have a seat and make yourself comfortable," she said, leading me to a small office area. I thanked her for taking the time to meet with me, and she explained that her father unfortunately wasn't feeling well enough to join us today. "He's just getting older, and it's difficult for him to keep up with the day-to-day activities," she said with obvious affection in her voice. "But I do love having him around. This is very much a family-run business. Diane told me the company's story as we sat in her modest office. Her parents had started Jones Health and Beauty about 40 years ago from nothing, building it into a successful operation through pure hard work and determination. 15 years ago, when Diane graduated with her MBA, she joined the company and started from the bottom despite being the owner's daughter. I wanted to earn my position, not just inherit it, she explained with pride. Now she was the CEO, running the day-to-day operations while her father served as an advisor. I told her honestly that I loved hearing stories like that it was clear they were a tight-knit family with real values. I'm very lucky to have the parents that I do, she said simply. They taught me that business success means nothing if you don't have integrity. I explained my client's situation in detail. Barbara needed commercial space desperately. There was essentially nothing on the market that met her criteria, and she was prepared to pay market rate with an all-cash offer and a 30-day closing. Diane listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. I did talk to my dad about this possibility last night after your call, she said. He pretty much trusts whatever decision I make at this point. I was thinking that we could definitely use the money to upgrade to a larger warehouse since we are growing. That's exactly why we tried to sell last year, so this actually is a good opportunity for us as well. I felt relief wash over me. This was going to work out perfectly for everyone involved. So, what's the next step? Diane asked, ready to move forward. I outlined my standard procedure to make sure we didn't waste anyone's time. I'd tour the property with her, take comprehensive pictures, and send them to Barbara for approval. If Barbara liked what she saw in the photos, I'd bring her back in person to see the physical property, and we could move forward from there. Diane agreed immediately, standing up to give me the full tour. She walked me through every section of the warehouse, pointing out recent improvements and explaining the layout. The space was clean, well-maintained, and absolutely perfect for Barbara's needs. What do you think? Diane asked as we completed the circuit back to her office. I think it looks great, I said honestly. I think she's going to love it. I sent the pictures to Barbara later that afternoon with a detailed description of the property's features and dimensions. Her response came within an hour, enthusiastic and ready to move. Perfect. When can we see it in person? She wrote. I immediately called Diane to set up a meeting for the following afternoon, and she confirmed her availability. Then I called Barbara to coordinate. Hey Barbara, how are you doing? It's me, John, I said when she picked up. I just spoke to Diane and reconfirmed our appointment. I let her know we'll be there in about 30 minutes. Barbara was already on her way, driving from her current facility across town. Just so you know, I checked my Waze and I'm running about 5 to 10 minutes late, she said. I told her not to worry, that I might be a few minutes late myself, and we agreed to meet there. I arrived at the Jones Health and Beauty warehouse a few minutes before 3 o'clock and waited in my car for Barbara to arrive. The parking lot was relatively empty except for a few employee vehicles and delivery trucks on the far side of the building. I was checking emails on my phone when I heard raised voices coming from near the warehouse entrance. Looking up, I saw Barbara's distinctive silver Mercedes pulling into the lot, and almost immediately there was some kind of commotion. A woman in work clothes appeared to be saying something to Barbara through her car window, though I was too far away to hear clearly. Then Barbara got out of her car, and even from 50 feet away, I could hear her voice escalating rapidly. What the hell are you doing? Why don't you open up your eyes before you cross the road, you idiot? My stomach dropped as I quickly got out of my car and started walking toward them, but the damage was already happening fast. The employee was trying to apologize, saying something about not seeing the car, but Barbara wasn't having any of it. Well, that's because you weren't paying attention, you fool! What are you doing here anyway? This is a private business! Her voice carried across the entire parking lot, loud and aggressive and completely inappropriate. The employee tried to explain that she actually worked there, and Barbara's response made me wince. No wonder this building's for sale if they've got a bunch of idiots working in it. The employee looked stunned and hurt, and then she simply walked away while Barbara stood there looking satisfied with herself, completely oblivious to what she'd just destroyed. I approached Barbara, trying to keep my expression neutral, though internally I was panicking about what had just happened. Hey Barbara, how are you doing? I said, forcing a normal tone. She turned to me with a bright smile, as if nothing had occurred. Good! Good! Great to see you, John. Are you ready for the meeting? I wanted to ask her what that confrontation had been about, but I decided to wait and hope that somehow it wouldn't matter. We walked together toward the entrance, and I led her to Diane's office, knocking lightly on the doorframe. "Hey, Diane, it's John," I called out. Diane looked up from her computer and gestured for us to come in, though she seemed distracted. "Just give me a second here," she said, her attention still on her screen. We sat down in the chairs across from Diane's desk, and I could feel the tension in the air, even though I didn't fully understand why yet. Diane finished whatever she was working on and looked up with an apologetic smile. "Thank you so much for waiting," she said politely. Then her eyes landed on Barbara, and her entire expression changed instantly. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and angry. "What is she doing here?" Diane asked, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. I felt confusion wash over me. "What do you mean? This is my client?" "The person who wants to buy this building," I explained, gesturing toward Barbara. Diane's face flushed red. "She needs to leave. Right now." I looked between them, completely lost. "What are you talking about?" "This is the meeting we scheduled, to introduce you to the client." Diane stood up from her desk, her hands flat on the surface, leaning forward with intensity I hadn't seen from her before. "We just had a confrontation in the parking lot, John. This woman called me every single name in the book, berated me, completely disrespected me in front of my own workplace. She needs to get out immediately." The pieces suddenly clicked into place with horrible clarity. The employee in the parking lot had been Diane herself. Barbara had just verbally attacked the owner of the property she wanted to buy, and she'd done it 10 minutes before our crucial meeting. I turned to Barbara, hoping desperately that there was some misunderstanding, some explanation that would make this salvageable. Barbara waved her hand dismissively like she was swatting away a mosquito. "We just had a couple of words in the parking lot. Not a big deal," she said with shocking casualness. Diane's eyes went wide with disbelief. "Not a big deal? You called me an idiot, a fool. You said my company hires idiots. You screamed at me like I was garbage, and you think that's not a big deal?" Her voice was shaking now, with anger and hurt both clearly visible. Barbara shrugged, still not seeming to grasp the severity of what she'd done. "It was just a couple of words, that's all. I was frustrated because you walked in front of my car." Diane pointed toward the door, her arm rigid. "Get out. I am not doing business with someone like you. I don't care if you offer me twice the market value for this building. I do not do business with people who treat others the way you just treated me." I tried desperately to salvage something from this disaster. All right, everyone just calm down for a second," I said, though I knew it was hopeless. Barbara finally seemed to realize she'd made a catastrophic mistake. "Listen, I admit it. I'm sorry. I apologize, okay?" But her apology was hollow, delivered with irritation rather than genuine remorse. Diane shook her head firmly. "Sorry is not going to cut it for me. I am not doing business with her, and if you don't get out right now, I'm calling the police." She looked at me with disappointment clear on her face. "John, I really thought you were different. I thought you worked with quality people." I felt sick to my stomach. 15 years of building a reputation potentially damaged by this one client's behavior. I looked at Barbara, and I knew what I had to do, even though it went against every instinct to close a deal. "Barbara, you heard Diane. Get the hell out of here. Leave now. Go." Barbara's face registered shock that I was siding against her, but I didn't care anymore. She'd disrespected someone I'd asked to trust me. Someone who was considering a major business transaction based on my word. "Why are you taking her side?" Barbara sputtered, but I was done. "Just go, Barbara. This meeting is over." She stood up, grabbed her purse, and stormed out of the office, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. The door slammed behind her, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. Diane sat back down in her chair, taking a deep breath to compose herself. "John, I am so sorry," she said quietly. "I know you put work into this, but I just cannot do business with someone like that. It goes against everything I believe in, everything my parents taught me about how to treat people." I shook my head, wanting her to understand that I completely agreed with her decision. "Diane, please don't apologize. You have absolutely nothing to be sorry for. What she did was completely unacceptable and unprofessional. I had no idea she was capable of that kind of behavior, and if I had known, I never would have brought her here." Diane nodded, appreciating my words. I believe you, John. I know this wasn't your fault. I stood up to leave, feeling the weight of the failed deal, but knowing that Diane had made the right choice. Look, I totally understand your decision, and I respect it completely, I told her honestly. The next time I have a client who's actually worthy of doing business with you, I promise I'll come through. I'll find you the right buyer who treats people with respect. Diane smiled for the first time since we'd arrived, a small but genuine expression. Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. And I do trust that you'll bring me quality people in the future. This isn't a reflection on you at all. We shook hands, and I left her office feeling both angry at Barbara and disappointed in myself for not somehow seeing this coming. The drive back to my office felt longer than usual as I replayed the disaster in my mind. Barbara called me 3 times, but I didn't answer. She left increasingly angry voicemails demanding to know why I'd sided with Diane, insisting that she was the client and I should have fought for her. The entitlement in her voice was stunning. She genuinely believed that her money entitled her to treat people however she wanted without consequences. By the time I got back to my office, I'd made my decision about how to handle this situation moving forward. I called Barbara back from my desk, and she answered on the first ring. John, what the hell was that? I'm the one paying your commission, and you threw me under the bus. I kept my voice calm and professional, the same tone I'd used to fire someone who'd violated company policy. Barbara, I'm going to be very clear with you. I will not be representing you in your search for warehouse space anymore. What you did today was completely unacceptable. You verbally abused someone in their own workplace, and then you refuse to take responsibility for it when confronted. That's not how I do business, and those aren't the values I represent. Barbara sputtered on the other end of the line. You can't just drop me as a client. I have the money. I have the cash offer. I'm the perfect buyer. I let her finish before responding. Money doesn't give anyone the right to treat people with disrespect. I'm terminating our working relationship effective immediately. I wish you luck finding representation elsewhere. Barbara's voice turned ugly then, threatening to report me to the real estate board, to leave negative reviews, to tell everyone in Mango Park what a terrible agent I was. I listened patiently, knowing that none of her threats had any teeth because I'd done nothing wrong professionally. When she finally ran out of steam, I simply said, "Goodbye, Barbara," and ended the call. Then I blocked her number. The relief I felt was immediate and profound. Some deals aren't worth closing when they require compromising your integrity and the relationships you've built over years of honest work. I'd rather lose a commission than lose the respect of people like Diane who actually understand what professional conduct means. I called Diane back later that evening just to check in and make sure she was okay after the confrontation. Hey Diane, it's John again. I just wanted to reach out personally and apologize one more time for bringing that situation to your door. Diane's voice was warm when she responded. John, seriously, stop apologizing. You couldn't have known she'd behave that way. And honestly, I'm grateful it happened before we got any deeper into negotiations. Can you imagine if we'd been in the middle of closing and her true colors came out? She had a point. You handled it with incredible grace. I told her honestly. Not everyone would have stood their ground like that, especially with that much money on the table. Diane's response stayed with me long after we hung up. My father always taught me that the character of the people you do business with matters more than the size of the deal. Money comes and goes, but your reputation and your peace of mind are priceless. That woman would have been a nightmare to work with, and every dollar she paid would have come with strings of stress and disrespect attached. She was absolutely right, and her words reminded me why I got into commercial real estate in the first place. It wasn't just about closing deals and earning commissions. It was about connecting good people with the spaces they needed to grow their businesses, building relationships based on mutual respect and trust, and conducting every transaction with integrity. 2 weeks later, I got a call from another client who'd been searching for warehouse space for about 6 months. His name was Marcus Thompson, and he ran a logistics company that was expanding. John, I heard through the grapevine that there might be a property in Mango Park coming available. Jones Health and Beauty, I think? Do you know anything about it? I smiled, realizing that Diane must have started quietly letting people know she was considering selling again. Marcus, I actually know that property very well, and I have a relationship with the owner. Let me reach out to her and see if we can make something happen. Marcus was everything Barbara wasn't. He was respectful, patient, realistic about market conditions, and genuinely appreciative of the work that went into finding commercial properties. I called Diane and told her about Marcus, giving her a complete rundown of his business, his needs, and most importantly, his character. Diane, I can personally vouch for this client. He's a good guy who treats people well and conducts business with integrity. I think you'd actually enjoy working with him. Diane agreed to meet with us, and the contrast between that meeting and the disaster with Barbara couldn't have been more stark. Marcus thanked Diane for her time, asked thoughtful questions about the property and the business she'd built, and treated every person we encountered with genuine respect. When we walked through the parking lot, he even stopped to help an employee who dropped a box, carrying it inside for her without being asked. The deal with Marcus closed 35 days later at market rate, exactly what Barbara had been offering. But the process was smooth, professional, and actually enjoyable because everyone involved treated each other with basic human decency. At the closing, Diane pulled me aside. "John, thank you for bringing me Marcus instead of pushing forward with that other woman. This experience has been so positive, and I feel really good about where my family's building is going. Marcus is going to take good care of it." I told her what I'd learned through the whole experience. "You taught me that sometimes the best deal is the one you walk away from when the people involved don't align with your values." I still run into people occasionally who ask me about the Barbara situation. Word spread through the commercial real estate community pretty quickly about the client who blew up a deal by attacking the seller in a parking lot. Some agents thought I was crazy for dropping a cash buyer with no financing contingency, but the majority understood exactly why I'd made that choice. And several told me they respected me more for standing by my principles than they would have for closing any deal regardless of the circumstances. My reputation actually improved because people knew I wouldn't sacrifice relationships for commission checks. What do you think about my situation? Have you ever had to walk away from money or a deal because someone's behavior crossed a line? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I'd love to hear how others have handled situations where profit and principles came into conflict.